part of the event here tonight, because at least we started off on a positive, vibrant note there with the singing. We appreciate it. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sowetan Dialogues, and tonight's event is hosted in partnership with UNISA. A very important topic facing our nation today, and that is the question of economic transformation.
It's not good enough for us to say, as people outside of politics, it's the politicians who have to resolve this. It's not. It's not the task of the Premier and his Executive Council in the province to give all the answers for Gauteng. Similarly, at the national level, we can't expect ministers to come up with all the answers. Yes, some of them do a good job and others may not. But the point is, we can't present a plan and say it's going to be executed. Government is responsible. And what if it doesn't happen? So there is a collective responsibility, and back to my point of saying, yes, it's time for a dialogue, let's call it that. Then it is a question, who should be the participants at the table? Of course, government has the main responsibility. But if government can't, and we all admit it's impossible for government to execute it all, then it means there has to be other players at the table as well.
There is a fundamental consensus about what is the appearance of the problem, and everybody enumerates it. We get all the calls, including the open letters that have been written by various groups. It is the appearance of it as unemployment, the appearance of the problem as poverty, the appearance of the problem as inequality, the appearance of the problem as social anger, as this violence can be named in different ways. When this violence is directed at immigrants, it's called xenophobic. When it is directed at middle class, it's called armed robbery. When it's directed when the same anger is directed at government institutions, it's called service delivery protest. But at the same time, it's violence. So there is consensus about the appearance of the problem, but there isn't actually consensus, if we listen carefully, about what fundamentally is the problem. And I think that is the big challenge. What fundamentally is the challenge? And I think that is where we got to start.
Well, I'll just share my views around the two issues that go to the heart of economic transformation. And the first being, and I do think that they're very interrelated, the young graduates who are not finding jobs, as well as the question posed, how can we attain economic transformation without access to state-of-the-art services? So the first one that comes to mind is, when you look at South Africa's revenue, this year, or the last fiscal year, it was 962 billion rand. 30% of that money was generated from income tax paid by individuals. Another 20% was income tax that was paid by companies, about 290 billion rand. Now, out of this 962 billion, and the reason why we have a deficit is because South Africa's requirements, and these are social requirements, education, health, and various other things that will make a country, exceed our revenue. So when we then say, can we attain economic transformation without state-of-the-art services? I think South Africa has produced many distinguished individuals. We've got companies that are second to none. So I would say the facilities are there. And I will admit, the facilities are not everywhere and they might not be enough. But we do need the economy to grow for the country to be able to invest in more facilities. So this is a chicken and an egg. Government cannot do more if it's not getting more money. So the issue around unemployment is it's a sore point, because every young person, once you've completed school or your degree or your diploma, you always assume that when you reach out into the world will be there with a job for you. Going back to a statement that was made, if there are 20 million people who are under the age of 19, 20 million jobs will be required within the next 10 to 15 years. So what we need to do is to get the economy to start working. So what it means is we've got to ask ourselves, how do we modernize the economy? How do we move from the current growth rate of 1% to 3%?
We cannot have a negotiations on taking half the money of someone. We need to impose the laws. We need a dictator to take that into consideration. We cannot be negotiating with people who've got money, because you must remember that someone who's got money will always run to court. Now we need to impose that this is 1, 2, 3 that we want for 1, 2, 3 reasons, because the banks they've got their money, the mining companies have got their money. We'll be in court because we're a democratic state. Now, we don't need democracy in this matter. We need to impose the laws.
My question is towards research and innovation. I was inspired by what the Chief Doctor said about Kenya being able to produce more apps than South Africa. I want to know what is Gauteng doing about research and innovation and young people, so that we, despite having 10% GDP that we contribute to Africa, we can double that within the next 10 years.
This problem that we're dealing with, Dr. Zulu, is a poor black problem. We must state it as it is. No, you're right. If we state it as it is, we must then say, what is it that we must do to deal with the poor black problem? Now, we must not, by the way, be afraid to learn from the Afrikaners. Yes. We must go and look at this bunch of people who came from Europe and were poor, and they did certain things. Today, poverty as a percentage of white society is 0.6%. Poverty as a percentage of black society is 54%. Colored is 27%, Indians is 13%. So, we need to ask the problem very sharply. We black people, we must have our own conversation. In history too, there is no group of people who made it their business to solve other people's problems.
Thank you. Well, I do think that we just have to understand the fierce urgency of the moment, given the pressure that we have. We either do it now or we die, we sink or swim. The main problem that we have may not even be the number of policies. We have produced some of the best policies. The question that we must be asking, why have we failed to implement those policies? It zeroes down to the agency or the people who should be implementing. What are the attributes? What are the weaknesses? As Fanon talks of the pitfalls of national consciousness, that is what we should be looking at to say, how do we have that change of mindset, that change of quality of people mobilized to transform the society. But that cannot be limited to government. It should be civil society, business sector, government, and everyone else. And then we push together for a change. Otherwise, if it is left to Department A and to government A or B, we will be where we were. We should complement each other in the process.
I do agree that in the series of problems, in the layers we have, and I can speak with confidence as one of those people in the ANC, corruption is a primary problem. I can speak with confidence that we will have to tackle corruption. As the colleagues here have been raised, it's no small problem, so it's not one of the small things in the corner. So in the questions that you have posed, Dr. Zondi, what is the problem? That's an important issue. I would, if you're saying that the problem is the person, there is also an objective independent of the people. There are other objectives, objective problems. An economic system that we have built so far, independent of the problem being the people. It's not an aspiration of what we wanted to have post-apartheid. So separate from the people. We are reproducing an economic system that will continue to keep black people outside the mainstream of an economy. And isn't what typical capitalism is about. And we want the majority to be in the mainstream of the economy. So the kind of economic system we want is one of the things we must have a conversation